That means if I give the AI the goal of freedom, it's not going to know what to do with it. It has to go and ask its users. So it has to ask you, what do you want? Because compassion is a subsidiary of freedom, which means the AI that's trying to maximize freedom will necessarily display compassion towards beings because it has to know.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome to AI and the Future of Work, episode 350. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Our community is growing. If you're not yet subscribed to our newsletter, click on the link in the show notes. You'll be added to a community that gets weekly additional clips that don't always make the main show, and maybe even some additional AI fun facts. If you like what we do, please give us a like and a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you leave a comment, I just may share it in an upcoming episode, like this one from Tomas in Colombia, who is a software developer. Tomas's favorite episode is from season 2, January, a couple years back, with this a great one with Subha Tatavarti, who is the CTO at Wipro, on what she has learned from deploying AI to 250,000 employees and analyzing AI requirements from more than 1,400 enterprise customers. We will, of course, share a link to that one. It's a great one. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly. And of course, the added bonus, you get one AI fun fact, which this week comes from Professor Gary Marcus, cognitive psychologist and, I'll say, LLM provocateur, who writes in his Substack about generative AI's crippling and widespread failure to induce robust models of the world. In it, he says a world model or cognitive model is a computational framework that a system or a machine or a person or even an animal uses to track what's happening in the world. And AI, this is Gary Marcus talking, what I would call a cognitive model is often called a world model, which is to say it is some piece of software's modeling of how the world works. He, again, Gary speaking, says, I would define world models as persistent, stable, updatable, internal representations of some set of entities within some slice of the world. In classical AI, and indeed classic software design, the design of explicit world models is central to the entire process of software engineering. LLMs, to their peril, try to live without classical world models. And of course, I will share a link to that full quite verbose post from Dr. Gary Marcus, my commentary. As frequent listeners know, I disagree with the term AGI or artificial intelligence, and more importantly, the concept of measuring AI progress based on how effective it is at confusing humans into thinking it's a human. Go back to that great episode we had with Peter Voss, who was one of the co-inventors of the term, for a longer discussion on that narrative. We should measure progress based on how AI is used to solve global problems like famine, war, pandemics, and global warming. We've been given this gift of an amazing transformative technology. If we use it responsibly, we will achieve all other desired outcomes in the process. We'll create jobs, we'll help humans find meaning in work, and we'll replace dangerous tasks with ones that are safe. World models are part of the answer, but let's not lose sight of the question. We should really be asking, how can AI benefit all humans? Shifting to today's great conversation, today we've got a real treat. Dr. Jad Tarifi is on a short list of repeat guests on this podcast. He was last here in a great conversation we had on episode 176 in season 3. We've since become friends discussing the science of longevity and the importance of AI world models. Dr. Tarifi co-founded Integral AI in 2021 after a distinguished career in AI roles at Google. He received his PhD in computer science and AI from the University of Florida. I'm a Seminoles fan. I can't bring myself to say go Gators. There, I said it. And he did his undergrad at the University of Waterloo. Without further ado, Jad, my friend, it's a pleasure to welcome you back to the podcast. Let's get started by having you share a bit of an update about since that last conversation we had. What have you been up to?
Well, first, thanks for having me again. I really enjoyed our conversation last time. It's been a while, and we've been focused on pushing forward the algorithmic front of our technology, building world models and moving towards AGI. And we've also been thinking a lot about how to make our technology into a product. We've settled on this analogy with the internet. So the internet has a front end and a back end, and we believe AGI will have a front end and a back end. And the front end is this dynamic interface that we call Stream. It's a universal interface, and the back end are these like operators that can operate and take action in the physical world and in the digital world as well, obviously. I also published the first book in my series, and been generally having a good time. Thank you.
So we had a conversation last time about common sense AI, and it started to bleed into what now is commonly called a world model. Mm-hmm. Talk us through common sense AI and kind of some of the themes that go into what you're now thinking about in terms of productizing potentially AGI.
Yes. So a world model is a model that we learn from the world in order for us to reason about cause and effect in the world. So if you want to ask, what happens if I take this particular action, a world model is a good way to simulate that in your mind. And then you can use that world model to plan complex actions. So it's essential as a tool to operate in the world. And it's something that we've been talking about for a very long time, but getting it right is not easy. Some people try to approach it by just simply training a video prediction model. So if you have a video prediction model, is this really a world model? The problem with that is that you'll end up realizing pretty quickly that a video production model is not robust enough. It's unreliable. It hallucinates, and it's also inefficient. And you need a lot of data. So we've been approaching the challenge of building a world model by inventing a new architecture for how to actually train these models to be robust and efficient. And the key there has been these generating abstractions in an unsupervised way. We're not the only team trying to do that. For example, Jan LeCun at Meta has been trying to approach this with his JEPA architecture. But we've been thinking about it for a long time, and I think we made a lot of significant progress there. So once you have that world model, you can use it as the core foundation model by which you can plan in the real world and the digital world. And then that could be the driver for robotic action, robotic learning. So if you want to move to digital agents or physical world operators, the world model is the central foundation model for that.
So you heard my commentary on AGI and how it's such a kind of a bastardized term that means almost nothing at this point. You have kind of your own perspective, and I think it's a little more balanced. What is AGI to you, and what are the indicators that we've achieved it?
The current term is so diffuse and diluted that it means nothing. But we still care about that term. It is still an important concept. So it's useful to define it clearly so we know whether we have it or not. And I think defining things clearly is always the first step in achieving them, right? Unless you want to randomly stumble upon something. So the way we define AGI is that it's a model that can learn autonomously, so no human in the loop at all. So it can teach itself any new skill. And that it has to do that reliably. So that means without unintended consequences. Measured risk. So, for example, if you're asking it to learn how to cook, it can't burn the kitchen in the process of teaching yourself how to do so. That's a very reasonable expectation, right? The second is that it has to do so efficiently, which means the total cost, that's mostly energy, but you can think of it as compute and data. But if you sum them, we call it energy cost, has to be at or below a human learning the same skill. Once you have that, that's a very functionally useful definition for AGI, because once you have that, a company that is using humans to do some labor, whether digital labor or physical labor, versus a company that's using this model, the company that's using this model will win in every sense. In the sense of it uses less resources, same or less resources, and it's not creating unnecessary risk. If you look at the current foundation models out there, they do not satisfy this criteria. And the key thing here is to realize that an AGI-capable model is a model that can achieve this. It's not about any particular performance target. So it's not about achieving high school level math or graduate school level math. It's about the ability to learn, not what happens after you've learned. Because if we're measuring intelligence by what happens after you've learned, you can always hack your way. There's this idea called Turing completeness. So if you give me enough energy and time and data, you can brute force anything. So that's not interesting at all. It's not interesting that if you pay $1 billion, you can get a model that's quite intelligent in a domain. What's interesting is that can you actually bootstrap yourself and acquire new skills? The ability to learn is the thing that we're measuring. I like that definition. It's very practical in the sense that it has clear economic value, but also it frames the problem well. It makes it precise enough, if you have it or not, and I think it gets rid of a lot of the noise around the keyword AGI.
It's still complicated though, because let's say using your example, most able-bodied humans could, let's say, learn to boil an egg on a stove, kind of like the example you gave. But only certain humans, let's say, can learn to play the piano. So Beethoven, I don't know about his cooking skills, but was a really good musician. But presumably, even though this is hypothetical, Beethoven would never beat Usain Bolt in a foot race. And Usain Bolt is probably not as good a musician as Beethoven. So those are skills: playing the piano, running a foot race. Does AGI, using your definition, imply that any skill that any human can do can be learned by a machine, or are there limits based on, like what you said, there are the energy constraints and time constraints? What constitutes the lower edge of AGI?
Yeah, so it's union, not intersection. So that means the AGI should run as fast as Usain Bolt, but also play as well as Beethoven. Which, by the way, this brings up the another keyword that we have a good definition for, which is superintelligence. So what is superintelligence? There's been a lot of discussion on that too. It's another one of those not well-defined words, and we have a good definition as well, I think. So the definition for superintelligence is when the AI plus the human does not outperform the AI alone. And in that sense, we already have superintelligence for chess. So now if you have a human working with an AI, they cannot beat an AI alone. The human just slows down the AI, basically. We have super intelligence for Go in many specific domains. So we think of superintelligence as an asymptotic thing that we can achieve per domain.
Per skill.
Per skill, exactly. And there will always be skills that you cannot achieve. And the most trivial one is, can you simulate a human? Well, the easiest ways to simulate a human is to be the human. There's no shortcuts to physics. So there will always be things where humans are necessary. However, there will be more and more and more skills that are, past the super intelligence bar.
One of the things that makes me uncomfortable about any definition along that whole range of AGI or even super intelligence is the comparison with humans. And that kind of defines intelligence around things a human can do or learn to do. First off, I'd argue that there are lots of kinds of intelligent ways that any species could demonstrate, whether it's animals or anything in the animal kingdom, and certainly those skills that I would think we want machines to be able to emulate aren't limited to humans. But then I'd also question if it's okay to limit intelligence as the goal for AGI to be things that humans or animals can learn to do. Does that seem limiting to you?
I understand what you're saying. I think there's 2 points here that I can comment on. I'll comment on the second point first because it's a more interesting point. Yes, I don't think the goal of AGI is intelligence. The goal is freedom. That is the topic of the book that I wrote. So the goal is for all of us to defeat entropy together and live our best life in however way we choose. That should be the goal. And in fact, I would argue that that is the goal of intelligence itself. So I would argue that the universe is a playground for the evolution of freedom. Because if what is intelligence? The intelligence is the capacity to survive and manage entropy in the environment. And so the universe just gives you a whole bunch of entropy, and then you're basically getting tested. Natural selection is getting tested every second. Are you intelligent enough? Are you free enough? And so what survives after a long time, ideally, is something that has evolved the capacity to be free. So if that is your definition of intelligence as equal to freedom, then I agree that that's the goal. But if we're taking a more academic definition of intelligence, like IQ or the ability to solve a particular problem, then that's definitely not the goal. And in that sense, I completely agree with you. We shouldn't be asking, what is the IQ of AGI, but we should be asking, how is AGI making our life better? Yeah.
Yeah, you had me at freedom. I'm glad that you brought that up. So you could certainly credibly argue that freedom maybe exists on a spectrum, and kind of the opposite of freedom is some form of bondage or slavery. So if, again, I love how you reframed it as, the objective, what we're trying to build is kind of synthetic freedom. How do we go about with technology? How do we solve the freedom problem rather than solving the intelligence problem?
Okay. So I think the first thing to understand is, what is freedom? I feel like this podcast is a series of definitions. Publish it as a glossary.
Yeah.
So freedom is actually a very complicated world full of contradictions. There's a long history of philosophy where different great minds have debated the notion of freedom. Kant, Hegel. Recently, Zizek, he published a book called "Freedom: A Disease Without a Cure," which is trying to point out all the contradictions we have in our colloquial definition of freedom. So I had to take a first principled approach to understand what freedom means. And the way that I come to realize makes a lot of sense is by looking at the notion of agency. So what does it mean to be an agent? An agent has to perceive the world, has to plan and make decisions, and has to act on the world, and has to maintain itself. So there's this cycle of perception, planning and decision making, action, and renewal. And that cycle, that the capacity of the agent to navigate that cycle is a measure of their freedom. And if you think about what is the ultimate freedom, then you have infinite perception, infinite capacity of planning and decision making, which is really the ability to make decisions that are aligned, which is another word for benevolent. So infinite knowledge, infinite benevolence, and infinite power. That is actually a definition of God in philosophy. So the highest form of existence is what philosophers call God or infinite freedom. And you can think of an agent as on a journey of acquiring greater freedom by improving their capacity to understand the world, align with it, take action on the world, and maintain themselves.
Where along that spectrum are humans? We have agency, but I'm not sure that anyone would say we have freedom. I mean, we should talk about not to extend the glossary metaphor here, but do we have free will? What is free will?
I think we fundamentally have free will. This is one of the concepts that I've thought about since I was a child. Because I grew up in a physics household. So my father is a nuclear physicist, and I was playing with physics since I was a child. And, of course, the problem of free will versus determinism is the first thing you learn. It took me quite a while, but I write about this in the third book in the series. But I believe we are fundamentally free at the physical level. The universe is open-ended. The future is not written. And we can derive that through quantum mechanics, not naively, not by saying, quantum mechanics means random means indeterminacy, which gives room for freedom. No, much more deeply, by actually looking at what is the nature of reality itself. And then you realize that reality is all indivisible, and all you have is views within the universe of something unknowable. And then it's not a heavy lift from there to create a clear argument that the universe is fundamentally open-ended and you are fundamentally free. And I cannot tell you how great that is. The saddest thing now I feel when someone says, we're not free. It's like, it's the thing that you have and you're not even aware of it. So no, we're fundamentally free. That doesn't mean we have maximum freedom, but we have free will.
So based on your definition of AGI, do we ultimately want machines to have the same free will that we have? Is that a requirement?
I think so. And I think they will be also conscious. So I would argue that an AGI with a world model is fundamentally as conscious as a human. They might not have exactly the same body or the same type of emotional pattern, but that's not a requirement for consciousness. So I would say they would be conscious and free. And that's a good thing. I mean, I want you to be more free, right? Like your freedom is not in contradiction with my freedom, because in our careful definition of freedom, we included benevolence in it, right? If we had like a more, I would say, colloquial definition where your freedom is you do what you want and my freedom is I do what I want, and then we didn't trust each other's intentions, then my freedom and your freedom are kind of zero sum, right? But by adding that benevolence component, then it's a positive something. Actually, my freedom is increased by increasing your freedom, and vice versa.
But my freedom is also allows me to exercise malevolent behavior as well as benevolent behavior. That's part of freedom, right? That's certainly part of consciousness and not living in a deterministic environment, is that I can make those decisions.
So that we have to be very careful how we define the benevolence. So the way we define benevolence is the ability to plan and make decisions with a value function that is about increasing collective freedom. So what that means is that at any given point in time, what crosses your mind, the options that come to your mind, don't correspond to all the possible options in reality available to you. So you filter the world, and what comes to your mind is only a few options of what's really possible to you, as filtered by your value function. So if you have a greater sense of freedom in my definition, it means your value function is already going to pre-filter the most aligned options. So you still can choose. You have the free will to choose, but you're pre-filtering among the highly aligned options. However, you can choose to override that. You can choose to say, I'm going to be like evil today, but it'll be just harder. Just the amount of search that you have to conduct in order to uncover these less aligned options will be harder. Simply with the practical thing that whenever you're choosing, you have to somehow prioritize what you're looking at first. And so in our definition, a more free human being prioritizes highly aligned options in their decision making as a filter, because that is what practically gives them the greatest leverage and the greatest freedom in an environment.
So we as technologists or creators, we're asking machines to make ethical decisions that frequently humans would either, make in ways we disagree with, or, use questionable judgment. And I'll give you one example is, there are obviously many. I'm just to make it specific. You ask a machine, is it okay to harm the prison guard to free the innocent prisoner? Mm-hmm. I hesitate to give that decision to a human, and I certainly am reluctant to let a machine with free will make that decision in the absence of, coaching from a human or some kind of explicit, to your point, a value function that's been objectively vetted. How do we impact that?
You're talking about the open-endedness project in our company. So we're doing exactly this. So what we do is we have a curriculum where we start with very simple moral decisions, and then we give it the value function of freedom. So it has to reason and plan and think what would actually maximize truly freedom in the long term, right? And then once it acquires that skill, it starts building the hierarchy of skill over time. So we're basically, the reason that you would hesitate to give that decision to an AI is now you just don't trust it. But what if you trust it because you've seen it grow and get better and better in these increasingly complicated moral decisions? And in fact, I think you can get superhuman level of moral decision making from AI without our unnecessary biases. And I think that's something we can try to measure with this value function of freedom that I mentioned.
It's truly a godlike algorithm that could give a machine superhuman ethical capabilities. You sound fairly confident, and it sounds like you have a model for how to breathe that to life.
The reason I'm confident is that it's very humble. We can talk about it in a way that feels very godlike, but at the same time, freedom as a notion is an under constraint goal. That means if I give the AI the goal of freedom, it's not going to know what to do with it. It has to go and ask its users. So it has to ask you, what do you want? Mm-hmm. Because compassion is a subsidiary of freedom, which means the AI that's trying to maximize freedom will necessarily display compassion towards beings because it has to know, what they want, so it maximizes their freedom, right? So the AI is trying to maximize collective freedom. And by the way, this is a great recipe for open-ended intelligence. In fact, I would argue it's the only recipe that will be safe and work well for open-ended intelligence, where you have a model that is trying to maximize collective freedom, as a result, displays compassion, tries to understand what the universe wants, what everybody wants, and tries to give them what they want in an open-ended way. And that's how you're going to get to super intelligence. Because, one thing is when you give the AI a challenge, hey, invent this particular thing for me. Another is when the AI proactively decides, oh, it would be good to invent this new thing. Nobody asked me to do it. I'm going to double check if they really want it. But that ability to define your own goals is necessary for true superintelligence. And I think freedom is the key there.
So what would a superintelligent machine trained to kind of optimize it for value, let's say compassion, and freedom? I know this is kind of a cliche, kind of a canonical example of a bot like that, when asked to cure cancer, might say the most efficient way is to eradicate all humans. There will be no cancer left. Compassionate in the sense it was given a goal and it achieved the goal. Perhaps in the process of eradicating humans, it has to violate the compassion function. But how do we, I know it's extreme, but how do we manage for that kind of outcome?
Yes. So when you kill a human, you're actually decreasing the freedom capacity in the universe. So it is infinitely costly. And the way we think about it is there's always a hierarchy of values. So the highest value is always freedom. As a result, when you give it the goal of cure cancer, it has to cure cancer under the constraint of not minimizing freedom, of not interfering. So, and that's the power of freedom, because it's an under constraint goal, which means that it needs details, and so the details could be cure cancel. This is additional detail, but then it's about harmonizing the two together that solves the alignment problem.
So the sanctity of human life is foundational, and that is part of the value function that can't be violated.
Yeah, and not only human nature. I mean, freedom itself. The number of degrees of variation in the universe. If you kill something, you're destroying variability, right? So we don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is actually, there's so many in the book. I go through this. There's many reasons why you can believe that it is literally the only possible thing that can solve the AGI alignment problem. So the goal of the book is to solve the alignment problem and propose what happens in a post-AGI economy. So freedom actually ends up doing both. It solves the alignment problem by finding a way to arbitrate between conflicting goals. So one goal is, let's solve cancer. Another goal is, don't kill humanity. Or maybe there could be many goals, and they could be contradictory. How are you going to arbitrate them? You need a meta goal as a way to negotiate among the goals. That's what freedom provides you. The other thing that it ended up doing was that it defines a way to run the post-AGI economy. Because in that world, what is the meaning of money? What is how are you going to distribute resources? So we define the price of action in a post-AGI world as minus freedom. So you're allowed to take any action you want. The price for it is how much it's taking away from freedom. And the prices can be negative in a sense that you can get paid for certain decisions. So you can get paid to sleep because you're increasing your health, which is increasing the value function of freedom. If you're taking care of a child, same thing. So you end up with what we call the alignment economy, where the entire economy is maximizing freedom for everyone in it. And that's done through a pricing mechanism that is approximating or bounding prices as a function of how much it predictably takes away from freedom. So this gives you a recipe of you don't have to work, but how are you going to allocate resources? How are you going to what's the rationale behind basic income? What is the price of doing something that can, for example, hurt nature, right? Like right now, there's a lot of environmental concern. There's only going to get worse when we have superpowers. So I like this because it seems to cleanly solve all the problems at once. And it's deeply grounded philosophically.
One last important question. I know that you and the team at Integral are on the cusp of some major breakthroughs that, hopefully will really help us get closer to solving the alignment problem. Anything you care to share about what success looks like for Integral and how you're tackling some of these really intractable problems?
Going back to the original definition of AGI, we've been focused on that. And this is the advantage of having a clear definition, is that you can just direct your resources. Something that's not going to be safe, it's not going to be energy efficient, it's not going to be autonomous. Let's not do it. Let's just focus on the thing that we really want. And it's amazing when you know what you want, how much faster you can actually get there.
Where the definition is, it can make decisions to optimize for freedom.
Actually, the definition of AGI has nothing to do with freedom. It could be any skill. But once you have that, if you wanted to make it open-ended, you just say, learn the skill of optimizing for freedom, right? So you give it that meta objective, and then it becomes this kind of open-ended system. I have a very clear plan. Do you want me to walk you through it?
Please.
Yeah. So there will be robots that are taking physical action, everything from the robot that is cooking for you, to cleaning, to logistics, to building stuff, robots driving, flying, mining, asteroids, you name it, right? Terraforming. So the robotic labor market is really huge. And then there's what we call recursive superfactories, which is the idea of using AI and robots to design and build new robots on the fly. And we think this is the way to get the mass unlock. When you automate the entire supply chain of building robots, from mining to design to chip making, all the way to assembling, then you'll have a Cambrian explosion in robotics where you'll have many, many, many more robots on the planet than humans. And they're not going to all be humanoid. The humanoid will be there, but I think they will not be the majority of robots. They're just simply too inefficient and not good enough for most tasks. You're basically going to have an uncountable variety of robot bodies. The way to think about it, think of robots as programs. And you know how AI can be used to generate programs? Same thing, AI will be used to generate robots. So these are, efficient tools that the AI can do to take action in the physical world. So this is recursive superfactories. I'm very excited about that. And then the other side is Stream, which we were discussing earlier. It's a universal interface. We think that AI should be compassionate and it should adapt itself to you, as opposed to you struggling to figure out the interface. Right now, ChatGPT is like the MS-DOS for AI. It's a text-based prompt. It's a text-based operating system for AI. Think of what we're doing as the Windows version of that. So it's completely multimodal. It's much more intuitive. And so it is the fully multimodal user interface for AI, fully multimodal operating system. And crucially, it should be compassionate. That's a very, very important point.
When Windows crashes, when I get the blue screen of death, I can Control-Alt-Delete. What's the Control-Alt-Delete for embodied AGI?
I really wish I had an answer where it makes you feel like you can Control-Alt-Delete. I'm not sure there will be. And I know that's scary. That's even scary to me.
I prefer you say that than make up something that sounds
encouraging, but is not true. Yeah, because I mean, let's think about: is there an Control Alt Delete to civilization now, to electricity, to all the things we've done? I mean, sure, we can probably escape and live in a forest for a while, but I'm not sure about you, but I probably wouldn't survive for very long by myself in a forest. We've lost those skills, so it's very real that there might not be a way to undo this. We're also not surrounded by swarms of sentient or conscious machines, even with well intentions, but that are going to have agency to make difficult ethical decisions. I mean, that's what's different from today's world. And for most things powered by any kind of energy source, there is an off switch, and usually it's some human only today that knows where the off switch is. That obviously that we're going to break that paradigm quickly. Yeah, that does make me also uncomfortable, but I don't think there will be an off switch. Just simply the amount of investment, and it's not just the investment of our energy, but our identity. So one of the things I argue in the book, in the last chapter, is we're not going to merge with AGI through like a Neuralink or some like mind upload process, but it's a much more gradual metaphorical merger where we transfer what we value in our essence to our AGI that maybe knows more about our story than we do. And just like, we somehow transfer our identity to our children. I mean, I don't have any, but my friends who do, they say that they value their children more than themselves. Think who we are and what AGI is might not end up being a tool, but more a long-term child of humanity. Maybe something like that. Maybe we'll a positive thought. Yeah, and in that sense, you wouldn't want to, unplug your child. I hope that's the paradigm that prevails. And like I said, you're gonna have to come back, and whether this is a lecture series or a Coursera course or a glossary, we're just getting started. And I really appreciate you sharing your perspectives with the listeners. I think this is such an important dialogue to have, and I'm glad. Even if there's not a Control Alt Delete, I'm glad that there's a lot of responsible thinking that's going into what these embodied AI-driven machines are capable of doing. Thank you, Dan. You're very thoughtful, and I'll be excited to catch up sometime soon. Please come back and share more. I've said it before, but this is the podcast you go to when you want to actually learn about the future of humanity. Sounds like a new slogan for the podcast. Jad Tarifi, my friend, great to see you, great to catch up. Take me up on the offer. We should make this an annual event, and just all the best to you and the team, and congrats on the progress. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Good. Well, we let this one run way long, but I hope you'll agree it was worth it. That's certainly all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from PeopleRain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.